emotional development in the primary years. Social and emotional development is an important component for young kids as they're growing and developing. A lot of different things happening in the primary years for kids. Okay? And so kids are working on themselves, a sense of understanding. Here it talks about competency. And if we look at Erikson's theory or talk about Erikson's theory, they're looking at industry versus inferiority. Okay. Working at like mastering a skill, developing a skill, trying to understand a skill. So basically like being able to do it and not being able to do it and working towards becoming proficient at it. Kids are these school age or primary age kids will question kind of themselves. Can they do it? Can they not do it? They're going to try to do things and will fail at it. Some will be resilient and do it and continue to do it until they do it successfully, and others will struggle with that. So again, a variety of ways in regards to children developing during this time. A sense of competence in school setting. Children are developing this. Primary age kids are developing this at this time. And so part of our job as teachers is to build that confidence and competence in a school setting. Some things that here it talks about some practices that can undermine a sense of competence is assigning some kind of evaluative symbol for things, stickers, grades, etc. If kids don't get them as maybe they did something incorrectly or wrong, then that confidence they have could drop, okay? Which is okay at sometimes. We have to evaluate, right, kids in a variety of ways, but it doesn't always have to be with a grade, or it doesn't always have to be with a sticker, whatever. Sometimes it can be, and sometimes it doesn't have to be. And so these things that we talk about here about some of these practices doesn't mean that you should never do them. It just means you have to use them sparingly and mix in a variety of other strategies as you work and teach your kids. So public comparisons, comparing kids with each other or with siblings, grouping by ability, whole group instruction, and overly formal relationships between children and the teacher. Okay, we use whole group instruction. It's a good strategy, okay, but you can't use that all the time. Right? Grouping by ability is also okay during certain times, but you can't use that all the time as well. So, and when you group by ability, if you something that you continuously do for your class, you want to allow students to move from in between groups. If they're, for example, if their ability in math puts them in the second level, but they start making progress and they can move up to the first level, then they should be able to do that. So just an example there in terms of how you can group by ability and also move kids around. Self-evaluation also happens for kids during this stage, this age group, in terms of looking at self-esteem, in terms of being good at certain things or a variety of things, being liked, being accepted by their peers is a big component for the self-evaluation. They also have an internal versus external control on their feelings, right? How do they control what they're feeling? How do they express what they're feeling? And that external control would be like showing that those feelings. Also, the self-worth is something that is part of the self-evaluation. Are they responsible, obedient, like that term, but are they, do they follow the rules? Do they understand? Do they help out, listen? Those types of things. So these things all work together to look at a student's, to look at their self-evaluation of kind of who they are and then what they might be or what look like. Self-esteem and culture plays a huge role in student social and emotional development. This is kind of, how a student views themselves, okay? In terms of, is their self-worth tied to a group of their friends, their classmates, their family members? Typically, it is tied to something or some type of a group. And with our young kids, typically it's tied to their family. for the most part, but not in all cases. The sense of self-control as well, belief that the group is powerful and can overcome adversity. And so that's a big component in terms of a culture or a group of people helping an individual overcome adversity or setbacks as well. Children learn which criteria to value within different cultural competencies. Being a good student, being a good friend, being a good person, whatever that might be within that group, okay, within that cultural competency. Cultural influences sense of control as well. Looking at belief in fate versus belief in the power of an individual, and also understanding that stereotypes can reduce feelings of control as well as other prejudices, for students. So this is in regards to like self-evaluation, right? In regards to students looking at themselves and what they believe and follow. Cultural norms that influence moral self-worth, again, compliance or obedience, the ability to listen, right? Having individual responsibility for a variety of things, helping others, other respectfulness, etc. There's lots of different components that go into this moral self-worth piece. And so students really are starting to feel that out, sense that out. They have all these different components are being taught from the family perspective, but then as they grow into primary age kids and get into that first, second, third grade, they're going to have a lot of other influences from different cultural norms that will students have to assess whether they want to include that within their lives. Self-esteem, prejudice, and the myth of self-hatred. So children, myth of self-hatred. So meaning obviously that, kids don't like who they are, they hate themselves, etc. This myth being that kids or children of color hate themselves and are to be pitied. No evidence on this, right? Ethnic identity and ethnic pride help protect children in the face of bias and hatred. So the more that we can support, uplift, and understand the different cultures that come into our classroom and help those students in regards to pride and understanding and us wanting to know more about groups of people that are different from us will help students if they do come across any hatred or bias that might come their way during our time with them in the classroom. Children first learn to view themselves as boys and girls. When we're talking about gender. Typically focus on expectations for their own gender and not the others. But there are lots of stereotypes based on gender, who could do what, how they associate with, and those types of things. With different perspectives in regards to transgender children as well. That makes it even more confusing and difficult in regards to different stereotypes and the different gender components that there are. So just know that we have to be aware and understand that there's some different questions, different stereotypes that are typically out there, but that they should not be categorized as normal, right, for our kids in terms of boys can only do one thing, girls can only do the other, etc. We want to make sure that kids are exploring a variety of opportunities and playing with different things, different games, activities, etc. So just have to be on the lookout for that and be open-minded and aware of multiple things happening there in regards to gender. Ethnic identity. Of course, primary age kids and young kids identify with their own racial or cultural group as they're raised by their family. Typically focused on physical characteristics in the early primary years, but later in primary years, looking at subtle differences between maybe physical characteristics as well as other practices within their ethnic identity. So, and typically children in this age group do assign value to the groups that they are part of. And so some will identify very strongly with a group, the ethnic group or their culture, and others may not. Again, could depend upon how their family raises them, or how much they are engaged or involved with their identity. And some families do not choose to do that. So that is something that we have to try to understand, that just because someone is of a certain ethnicity does not necessarily mean that they participate in some of the cultural norms that might be associated with them. So we want to make sure we understand that before we assume things. So here it talks about ethnic socialization, basically talking about that family members are the first people to teach the children about different beliefs, roles, history, etc., as part of their cultural ethnic group. And so ethnic socialization, typical ethnic socialization messages that can be shared or shared with students, things like be honest and fair, is typically all cultures, right? No matter what they are. Some talk about ancestors had to cope with adversity. Now, some groups may not talk about that, and so, but it might be pretty common for marginalized groups to and people to talk about that. And you're as good as anyone else. Again, something with minority or marginalized groups would be something that might be within their socialized messages for young kids. Peer relationships, obviously very important during this time period for primary age kids. Typically, they are organized and have very well-defined roles and do contain subgroups and cliques within your classroom setting. And so, again, not that everybody doesn't get along, but it might mean that certain groups of kids like to play together at recess or do things together, during times of the year. And of course, relationships, these subgroups, et cetera, will transform over time. In first grade, some bonds or friendships might be quite strong. And by third grade, there might be a whole new group of friends or people that students hang out with. Peer rejection and reputation. So behaviors and traits that lead to rejection. So these things or these behaviors typically are behaviors that lead kids to be like rejected or excluded from groups of people, right? But kids that are very aggressive or hostile, and then kids that are very shy or timid. Okay? And those are the extreme ends of things, right? And so typically kids, if a kid is very shy or timid and not a little bit assertive, they might get overlooked or just kind of left out. When the opposite of kid is super aggressive, other kids typically don't want to play with them. And, a reputation for young kids can sometimes be hard to overcome, especially things, if the kid is very aggressive or hostile, for example. Kids know that that's something that follows the kid for some time, and it might be hard for them to get rid of them. Even if the behavior changes, sometimes that reputation will stick with them as kids, based upon what kids knew or know in the past. So, and sometimes, just like us as adults, that reputation is inaccurate, not deserved, but it can stick very easily. For kids who are neglected, there are some behaviors that are common with them. I mean, neglected like at home, for example, but typically they have poor social skills, so that makes them hesitant to join in activities with kids. And so it's something that we have to pay attention to. And typically they want to be alone. One, they feel more comfortable that way, but the other thing is that sometimes they are socially competent, but they just don't want to be engaged or involved with other kids their age. Kids and children want friends during the primary years. They actually seek out friendship, right? And it's not that they have a huge number of friends that do a whole bunch of things, but they seek out small groups of friends. They might have a best friend or a couple best friends that they really do a lot of things with. And so They usually admire each other or what the other their friends or their peers are doing and can do, and their friendship. They do a lot of things together, and they typically have some shared characteristics, okay, whether it's same gender, same ethnicity, same interest in activities. There's got to be some characteristics that are shared so that they're able to have some things in common. There's a lot of exclusive same culture friendships and action patterns, but it doesn't always happen. There are some, but it doesn't always happen. There's an experience with people of other cultures typically. There's different family beliefs, there's different cognitive development. So these are components that help influence the peer relationships with others outside of that same culture. As we get in and talk a little bit about children with disabilities and their social emotional development, kids that have serious emotional disturbance typically have extreme negative emotional reactions beyond a typical peer conflict or misbehavior. Maybe if you've seen a student reacting, throwing an excessive tantrum for an extended period of time, that would be a student that could have serious emotional disturbance where they can't regulate or control some of their behavior. So they'll internalize some behaviors. Some show externalizing behaviors, so it just kind of depends. But you typically need interventions for these students, whether it's some kind of behavior modification or plan, changing or modification of the curriculum for them in order for them to be able to complete activities and learn. And then also some trust building for some students if they have some trust issues with teachers or peers. To be able to get them to engage and connect with others in their classroom. Children with autism do have some, depending upon the severity of the autism and where they are on the autism spectrum, they can have some limited social interactions and competencies. They may be awkward in social situations. Some students make friends and interact very positively, but may not have the quality of friends or companionship as others do. So for us with teachers, we can set up some guided play opportunities for them and also support them to help them along that process of working with friends and building friendships. So children with ADHD will have issues and often have issues forming positive peer relationships with others because disruptive, unpredictable, more negative, less friendly. These are some characteristics of the students just because they are more active. Sometimes they're a little more aggressive in the way they do things, not necessarily in a mean way, but they are just more movement, more aggressive, more active. And so that can rub some other kids the wrong way and cause them to kind of exclude them or not want to include them in activities and events that they're doing in this classroom. This is a tough one. Children with invisible disabilities are more likely to be avoided by peers. Okay, you can't see that a student might have some mental health issues or they don't know that they have autism and they're acting a little bit differently. With a physical disability, kids can see that, they understand that, they know, right? But with some of these invisible disabilities, ADHD, autism, etc., their peers can't see why they're different, so they just kind of initially don't take the time to understand it or figure it out. So that's why it's important that we intervene as instructors to set up opportunities for kids to work together, engage together, and be interactive if they're a little bit different from each other. Here it talks a little bit about the brain and peer relationship and development. I'm going to move on to a couple different stages here in regards to moral development the chapter talks about. So here we talk about Piaget and his stages in regards to moral development. So he's got three stages that he talks about: the pre-moral, moral realism, moral relativism. So in the pre-moral stage, typically preschool, right? No clear rules when making moral decisions. So kids don't understand yet in the preschool age. They know a little bit about right and wrong, right? But they don't know all the details and all the situations in regards to moral decisions, right? As they move into the primary years, they understand that there's certain fixed rules and that they should follow those rules because there is a difference between right and wrong with that. As they move into adolescence, they understand that there are these fixed rules, but yet sometimes these rules are influenced by different situations and the intention that could be happening during that time. As of course, as we grow and develop, we understand that there are those rules, like I said, situations that arise, what is the intention of people, events. So we kind of take what we know and we apply it to that situation that we're a part of. Kohlberg stages is a little bit more detail and in depth than Piaget stages. So he breaks his into, I'm going to move down here, 3 levels, but multiple stages within those levels. And so there's 6 stages, 3 levels that we take a look at here. So here, if we're looking at the pre-conventional stage in level 1, and that which is most of the primary age children that we are talking about, he talks about kids do what's right because it's what you get rewarded for, and what is wrong is what you get punished for or have to face consequences for. And so, obeying your parents is right, okay? And you're not going to get punished. Stage 2, actions that lead others to like you or reciprocate your kindness are right. The reason for being nice to people is so they will be nice to you. And so looking at like the reward components or what's important, what's right, is kind of what this looks at, right? So the opposite of that, if you don't obey your parents, that's wrong. You're going to get in trouble. If you're not kind to others, they're going to get mad at you. They're not going to include you, etc. That's going to lead to some issues or you feeling left out. Level 2 is the conventional component. Social rules define what's right. Breaking the rules is wrong. And so stage 3 talks about what's right is that which pleases others. Actions that others do not approve of are wrong. Okay, so as you can think about in terms of social rules, something that might make one person happy could make another person upset, right? So there's some gray areas with that. Stage 4, what's right is obeying laws that have been set down by those in power in society, and what's wrong is breaking society's laws. Now, sometimes laws don't treat people equally, so that doesn't necessarily mean that this is all the time 100% correct. Level 3 is the post-conventional. What's right is determined by a higher order moral principles. And stage 5. Rules of society determine a mutual agreement. Rules that don't work or are destructive may be wrong, and changing the rules can be a morally correct action. Okay, so here again, kind of going back to the laws, obeying the laws blindly without thinking about it, but then looking at these laws, these rules that may not be working for all people, and taking a look at how we can change them. Stage 6, what's right is governed by universal moral principles, and values such as life is sacred and be kind to others define what is right. And so kind of looking at in this aspect, in this level, a little bit more higher order thinking component in regards to morals. Okay. So critiques of this talk about that it's focused on moral reasoning, not on moral behavior, and it specifically reflects values of the European American males and not representative of girls and women or other cultures that emphasize family and community over the individual person. Okay? And so while it's got some good ideas, it's not obviously very strong proven theory because of these critiques. But something just to be aware of, that there's different theories and stages in regards to moral development and how that develops in kids. Because part of our job as teachers in the primary age years, besides just teaching them content and academic skills, is to work with them on social, emotional, moral development as they continue to grow and develop what's right and what's wrong, what's acceptable in the classroom, those types of things. So it's a bit of a complicated process,